President Biden issued several stark warnings about threats to American democracy Thursday in Arizona.
They're a threat to our very democracy.
And I truly believe he's a threat to our democracy.
I think he's an existential threat to our democracy.
The danger he presents to our democracy.
I think you put your finger on really the gravest threat facing our democracy.
Our democracy is actually broken.
What we're seeing is a bit of a threat to our democracy.
It's a dagger at the throat of American democracy.
The threats that this democracy faces today.
The greatest threat to our democracy.
Threatening our democracy.
A serious threat to our democracy.
Serious threat to our democracy.
An existential threat to our democracy.
Calling them a, quote, direct threat to our democracy.
An existential threat to our democracy.
He's willing to sacrifice our democracy.
Around the globe, democracy is in crisis.
Our democracy is already in shambles.
Democracy faces greatest threats in the Civil War.
When we speak of threats to democracy, it seems to me the ultimate threat is a government that's detached from the will of the electorate. When we speak of independent bureaucracies, I think we have to ask the question, well, independent of whom? Well, obviously independent of the elected officials who are in turn elected by and answerable to the people.
Are a threat to democracy.
The direct threat to our democracy.
Criminally responsible for the assault on our democracy.
Of a literal and unprecedented attack on American democracy.
I think that could be the end of our democracy.
The greatest presidential threat to our democracy.
The biggest threat to our democracy.
Our ongoing threats to democracy.
Threats to democracy. Threat to our democracy.
Threats to democracy.
The threat to our democracy.
A threat to our democracy.
Threat to our democracy.
Is a threat to our democracy.
Danger to our democracy. The end of American democracy.
Potential threat to democracy.
A threat to our democracy.
A unique and existential threat to our democracy.
And it is deeply dangerous for our democracy.
Just some of the threats to democracy the U.S. is currently facing.
It's a threat to the brick and mortar of our democratic institutions.
We've made progress, but democracy is still at risk.
In this context, it belongs to a whole vocabulary, because you know as well as I do that hate speech is used also by the left to attack free speech. And election denialism is used by the left to attack free and unfettered questioning of sometimes dubious balloting. So the left does this. It uses these pejoratives to obfuscate what they're doing. There is a threat to democracy. And what is that threat? In my view, it's the weaponization of unelected people in the administrative state.